Fleet Admiral Peter Hayes stood on the bridge of the rebuilt Earth defense ship Defiance, watching as human and alien fleets faced each other in space above Earth. 2 years had passed since the Vorthak invasion began, and the solar system had become the center of the largest rebellion in galactic history. Ambassador Diana Foster prepared for the most important negotiation in human history. The Vorthak High Council had finally agreed to peace talks after rebellions on 37 worlds, had stretched their military forces beyond the breaking point. This was humanity's chance to reshape the entire galaxy. General Scott Adams studied tactical displays showing the positions of Allied fleets throughout the star system. Ships from a dozen different species had arrived to support humanity in the final confrontation with the Vorthak Empire. The oppressed had united against their oppressors. Dr. Linda Gray analyzed psychological profiles of Vorthak leadership that had been gathered through 2 years of warfare and intelligence operations. Her understanding of alien behavior would be crucial in determining whether peace was possible or if the war would continue. Admiral, the Vorthak flagship is requesting permission to enter Earth orbit for the negotiations, reported the communication officer. High Commander Zethkar wishes to speak directly with human leadership. Admiral Hayes looked out at the massive alien warship that had once seemed invincible. Now it was surrounded by human and allied vessels that could match its firepower. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted permanently. "Permission granted," Hayes replied, "but maintain full tactical alert. We've learned not to trust Vorthak promises." High Commander Zethkar stood in the landing bay of his flagship, preparing to set foot on the world his forces had failed to conquer. Around him were the surviving members of his command staff who had watched their empire's reputation for invincibility shatter against human determination. The shuttlecraft descended through Earth's atmosphere toward the landing site that had been chosen for the peace negotiations. Below them lay the ruins of cities that had been bombarded during the invasion. But scattered among the destruction were new buildings flying the flags of dozens of different species. Ambassador Foster waited at the landing site with representatives from every world that had joined the rebellion against Vorthak rule. The delegation included former slaves who had broken their chains and conquered peoples who had reclaimed their freedom. When the alien shuttle landed and its occupants emerged, the moment marked the end of an era. For over 1,000 years, the Vorthak Empire had expanded across the galaxy, conquering every species they encountered. Now they were the ones asking for terms. "High Commander Zethkar," Ambassador Foster said formally, "welcome to Earth. I am Ambassador Diana Foster speaking for the United Resistance Coalition." The alien leader looked exactly as he had during the first contact 2 years earlier. But his bearing had changed. The arrogance and certainty were gone, replaced by something that might have been respect or even fear. "Ambassador Foster," Zethkar replied in his gravelly voice, "I come to discuss terms for ending this conflict. The Vorthak High Council is prepared to negotiate." Dr. Gray had been studying the alien commander's body language and facial expressions since he emerged from his shuttle. Her analysis confirmed what intelligence reports had suggested. The Vorthak leadership was genuinely afraid of humanity. "The terms are simple," Ambassador Foster stated. "Complete withdrawal of Vorthak forces from all occupied worlds. Recognition of independence for every species under your control. Reparations for damages caused during your conquests." Zethkar's yellow eyes seemed to glow as he considered these demands. No defeated enemy had ever been in a position to dictate terms to the Vorthak Empire. But then no enemy had ever united half the galaxy against them. These terms would mean the end of the Empire, he said slowly. Yes, Foster replied without hesitation. That's exactly what they mean. The negotiations continued for 3 days, while fleets from both sides maintained tense positions throughout the solar system. But the outcome was never really in doubt. The Vorthak Empire was collapsing and everyone knew it. General Adams received hourly reports from resistance movements across the galaxy. On world after world, Vorthak garrison forces were surrendering or evacuating as local populations rose in rebellion. The empire that had taken centuries to build was falling apart in months. 39 worlds have declared independence in the past week, he reported to the human leadership. Vorthak military forces are in full retreat from the outer territories of their empire. Fleet Admiral Hayes monitored space around Earth as more ships arrived carrying representatives from newly liberated worlds. Many of these species had been conquered before humans had even developed writing. Now they were free for the first time in centuries. Captain Tony Garcia had been promoted to command of the entire Resistance space fleet. His forces now included captured Vorthak vessels operated by crews from multiple species. The aliens' own technology was being used to dismantle their empire. Admiral, we're receiving requests for military advisors from 16 different worlds, Garcia reported. They want human officers to help train their resistance forces. This was perhaps the most remarkable development of all. Species that had been conquered by the Vorthak were now asking humanity to teach them how to fight. The humans had become the galaxy's experts on resistance warfare. Sam Roberts had established manufacturing facilities on 7 different worlds, producing weapons and equipment for resistance movements. His designs combined human engineering principles with alien technology to create weapon systems superior to anything the Vorthak had. Production is exceeding all targets, he reported via long-range communication. We're now manufacturing more advanced weapons than the Vorthak Empire and distributing them to every species that wants them. Dr. Mitchell's psychological warfare campaigns had evolved into something much larger. His broadcasts were now carried by communication networks spanning dozens of worlds. He had become the voice of galactic liberation. Citizens of the galaxy, he announced in his latest broadcast. The Vorthak Empire is finished. After 1,000 years of oppression, the conquered peoples have united and broken their chains. Freedom is spreading across every star system. Major Watson led special operations teams that were active on Vorthak-controlled worlds throughout the galaxy. Her methods had been copied by resistance movements everywhere and were causing the collapse of alien military control. The Vorthak can't maintain occupation anywhere, she reported from her latest mission. Their forces are too scattered and their morale is broken. Local populations are rising up faster than they can respond. High Commander Zethkar faced the end of everything his species had built. The final negotiation session was about to begin, and he knew the Vorthak would have to accept terms that would reduce them from galactic overlords to just another species struggling to survive. The High Council has authorized me to accept your terms, he announced to Ambassador Foster. The Vorthak Empire will withdraw from all occupied worlds and recognize the independence of all conquered species. Ambassador Foster nodded, but her expression remained serious. And the reparations? We will provide what resources we can, Zethkar replied reluctantly. But you must understand that our empire is collapsing. We may not have the capacity to pay for centuries of conquest. Dr. Gray had been listening to every word while analyzing the alien commander's psychological state. What she found was remarkable. The Vorthak were not just afraid of military defeat, they were terrified of human psychological warfare. There's something else you need to understand, she said to Zethkar. Humanity didn't defeat your empire through superior technology or overwhelming force. We defeated you by refusing to surrender and teaching others to do the same. The alien commander stared at her for a long moment before responding. Yes, we have studied your resistance methods extensively. No other species has ever demonstrated such determination or adaptability. That's because no other species had to, Dr. Gray continued. You always gave them the choice between surrender and extermination. But you made a mistake with humanity. You assumed we would choose survival over freedom. Zethkar nodded slowly. We have learned that humans define survival differently than other species. For you, survival means remaining free even if it costs everything. General Adams had been coordinating with resistance movements across the galaxy as the final agreement was signed. Reports were coming in from every corner of former Vorthak space confirming that the Empire was finished. It's over, he announced to the assembled delegates. Vorthak forces are withdrawing from their last occupied worlds. The Empire has officially ceased to exist. The celebrations that followed lasted for weeks as species across the galaxy celebrated their newfound freedom. But the humans who had started it all remained focused on the future. They had learned that freedom required constant vigilance. Fleet. Admiral Hayes established the Galactic Defense Alliance with Earth as its headquarters. The organization would help liberated species maintain their independence and prevent the rise of new empires. We've learned something important during this war, he announced to the founding delegates. No single species should ever again have the... Captain Tony Garcia floated in the command center of the resistance base, built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. It had been 1 year since the Vorthak invasion of Earth, and the human resistance had evolved far beyond what anyone had expected. Hidden bases like this one operated throughout the solar system, attacking alien supply lines and communication networks. Engineer Sam Roberts worked in the zero-gravity workshop that had been carved from solid rock. Around him floated components of Vorthak technology that his team had captured during raids on alien convoys. After months of study and experimentation, he had finally cracked the secret of their shield generators. Tony, I think we've got it, Sam announced as he carefully assembled the prototype device. This shield generator uses the same frequency patterns as their capital ships. If we can build enough of these, our fighters might actually survive combat with their fleet. Captain Garcia pushed off a wall to float over to Sam's workstation. As a former Earth defense pilot, he understood exactly what this breakthrough meant. Human spacecraft had been helpless against Vorthak weapons for the entire war, but shields could change everything. Major Claire Watson received the transmission from the asteroid base while leading her special operations team through the ruins of London. Her mission was to infiltrate the main Vorthak intelligence center and steal their strategic planning data. Information was becoming as valuable as weapons in this new kind of war. Confirmed, she whispered into her communication device. Sam's shield technology works. We captured a Vorthak courier ship yesterday, and the shields held against their weapons for over 30 seconds. Dr. Roy Mitchell sat in his broadcasting studio hidden beneath the Rocky Mountains, working on his latest psychological warfare campaign. He had been studying captured Vorthak prisoners for months, learning about their culture and psychology. Now he was ready to turn that knowledge into a weapon. People of the galaxy, he began recording his message. This is Dr. Roy Mitchell speaking for the human resistance. For 1 year, the Vorthak Empire has been trying to conquer Earth. They promised a quick victory over a primitive species. Instead, they have suffered losses unlike anything in their history. The broadcast would be transmitted using captured alien communication equipment to every corner of Vorthak space. Other species under alien control would learn that the supposedly Invincible empire could be defeated. On Earth, the Resistance had grown into a sophisticated military organization. What had started as desperate guerrilla attacks had evolved into coordinated operations that challenged Vorthak control across multiple continents simultaneously. Marcus Davis led his expanded team through the tunnel network beneath Chicago toward their latest target. The Resistance had captured enough alien equipment to outfit entire battalions with energy weapons and portable shields. They were no longer just surviving, they were winning. Intelligence reports the aliens are pulling back from the outer districts, reported Katie Johnson from her command center. They're concentrating their forces around key installations and leaving most of the city to us. This was exactly what the Resistance had hoped to achieve. By making occupation too costly, the humans were forcing the aliens to reduce their operational area. Every block the Vorthak abandoned became a base for more Resistance operations. Hi. Commander Zethkar stood before the Vorthak High Council explaining his situation via long-range communication. The council chamber on the alien homeworld was filled with the Empire's most senior military and political leaders. None of them looked pleased with his report. Casualties now exceed 40% of invasion forces, he reported reluctantly. Human resistance has not weakened despite our control of major population centers. Enemy attacks are becoming more sophisticated and their technology is improving rapidly. The eldest council member leaned forward with his yellow eyes glowing with anger. How is this possible? You command the finest fleet in Vorthak history. Your forces conquered the Zalani in 3 days, and the Bryloth surrendered without fighting. Zethkar had been asking himself the same question for months. The humans are unlike any species we have encountered. They do not fight conventional battles or defend fixed positions. Instead, they adapt their tactics constantly and seem to learn from every engagement. Another council member spoke up. What do you require to complete this conquest? At least 3 additional fleets and authorization to eliminate the entire human population, Zethkar replied. Partial occupation is not viable against this enemy. The council fell silent as they considered this request. No previous conquest had required such resources or such extreme measures. The humans were forcing them to question fundamental assumptions about warfare and empire. Major Watson's team had successfully infiltrated the Vorthak Intelligence Center in London using captured armor and forged identification codes. The aliens' own security systems were being turned against them by humans who had studied their procedures for months. I'm downloading their strategic database now, she reported to her team while copying files from the alien computer network. This includes their force dispositions across the entire galaxy and communications with other occupied worlds. What she found in those files would change everything. The Vorthak Empire was facing rebellions on 17 different worlds. Species that had been conquered decades ago were rising up after learning about human resistance through intercepted communications. Dr. Mitchell's psychological warfare broadcasts had reached every corner of Vorthak space. His messages were being translated and retransmitted by resistance movements on dozens of worlds. For the first time in their history, the Vorthak faced coordinated opposition from multiple species. The Zalani have attacked Vorthak garrisons on their homeworld, Mitchell announced in his latest broadcast. The Bryloth have destroyed 3 alien supply bases. Across the galaxy, conquered species are learning that the Empire can be defeated. Sam Roberts completed the first production run of human shield generators in his asteroid workshop. 24 portable units that could protect fighters or ground vehicles from Vorthak energy weapons. It was not enough to equip a full fleet, but it was a beginning. Captain Garcia immediately began planning the first major space battle since the invasion. For months, the Resistance fleet had been limited to hit-and-run attacks against isolated targets, but with shield technology they could finally challenge the aliens directly. "Target the supply depot in the asteroid belt," he ordered his pilots. "Intelligence indicates it's defended by only 2 Vorthak cruisers. If we can destroy that facility, their entire logistics network in this system will be disrupted." The attack succeeded beyond all expectations. Human fighters equipped with the new shields survived direct hits from alien weapons and destroyed both enemy cruisers along with the supply depot. For the first time since the invasion, humans had won a conventional space battle. Commander Zethkar received reports of the successful human attack while dealing with rebellions on 3 other worlds. The strategic situation was deteriorating rapidly as more species joined the fight against Vorthak rule. "Sir, we're receiving surrender demands from the human resistance leadership," reported his communication officer. "Surrender demands?" Zethkar repeated in disbelief. "Yes, sir. They're offering to negotiate terms for Vorthak withdrawal from Earth and all other occupied worlds. The message is being broadcast throughout the Empire." The High Commander read the human message with growing amazement. After 1 year of brutal warfare, the humans were not asking for mercy or terms for their own survival. Instead, they were demanding the liberation of every species under Vorthak control. Admiral Kevin Stone spoke from his rebuilt command center as the human demands were transmitted across the galaxy. To High Commander Zethkar and the Vorthak High Council, humanity offers you one opportunity to end this war peacefully. Withdraw your forces from Earth and all occupied worlds. Grant independence to every species under your control. You have 7 days to respond. The message was an exact reversal of the original Vorthak ultimatum delivered 1 year earlier, but this time it was backed by military victories and support from rebellions across the galaxy. Colonel Parker coordinated resistance operations from her mobile command post as reports came in from around the world. Vorthak forces were withdrawing from outer territories and concentrating around their primary bases. The aliens were clearly preparing for either evacuation or a final desperate stand. Steve Miller had been mass-producing weapons and equipment using captured alien manufacturing technology. Entire factories hidden in underground complexes were turning out energy rifles and shield generators. The Resistance was becoming better equipped than many regular armies. "We're receiving confirmation from 17 different worlds," reported Katie Johnson from her global communication network. "Rebellions are active on every planet where the Vorthak maintain occupation forces." Helen Price had expanded her medical facilities to treat casualties from increasingly large-scale battles. But she was also treating Vorthak prisoners who had been captured during recent operations. Their psychological profiles revealed a military force that was losing confidence in their leadership. "The alien prisoners are terrified," she reported to Colonel Parker. Marcus Davis crouched in the darkness of an abandoned subway tunnel 6 months after the Vorthak invasion began. The tunnels beneath Chicago had become a second city where thousands of resistance fighters lived and worked. Above them, the aliens controlled the streets, but down here humanity was still free. Katie Johnson sat at her communications station, monitoring radio traffic from resistance cells across North America. Her equipment was built from parts salvaged from destroyed human technology and captured alien devices. The Resistance had learned to adapt faster than their enemies could respond. "Marcus, I'm getting reports from the Detroit cell," she whispered into her headset. They've successfully captured another Vorthak supply convoy. Steve Miller says he can reverse engineer their shield generators within 2 weeks. Marcus smiled in the dim light of their underground base. Steve Miller had become legendary among the Resistance for his ability to turn alien technology against its creators. Every piece of Vorthak equipment that fell into human hands was studied and improved. Dr. Nathan Wells worked at a table covered with alien weapon components in what had once been a maintenance room. He had been studying Vorthak technology since the first encounter and was beginning to understand how their systems worked. More importantly, he was finding weaknesses. Their energy shields operate on a rotating frequency pattern, he explained, to the other engineers gathered around his workspace. If we can time our attacks to match the rotation cycle, we can punch through their defenses. Helen Price moved through the medical section, treating wounded fighters who had been brought down from the surface. The Resistance had learned to move their injured through storm drains and utility tunnels that the Vorthak had not yet discovered. Her makeshift hospital saved dozens of lives every week. Above ground, the city of Chicago looked like a war zone. Buildings stood empty with broken windows and walls marked by weapon fire. Vorthak patrols moved through the streets in armored vehicles, but they never stayed in one place for long. Every corner could hide a sniper. Every building could contain a bomb. The aliens had learned to fear the human resistance, but they did not understand it. Commander Zethkar studied reports from his officers that described an enemy unlike any they had faced before. The humans did not fight pitched battles or defend fixed positions. Instead, they struck without warning, then disappeared. "Sir, we've lost another patrol in the industrial district," reported his tactical officer. 8 soldiers killed and their vehicle destroyed. The attackers escaped through the sewer system before our reinforcements arrived. Zethkar looked at the tactical display showing Vorthak positions throughout the city. His forces controlled the major intersections and government buildings, but the humans moved freely through areas his maps showed as secure. "How many casualties?" "This week?" he asked. 43 killed and 67 wounded, came the reply. "Our medical facilities are operating at full capacity." The High Commander found these numbers deeply troubling. In 6 months of occupation, his forces had suffered more casualties than during the conquest of 3 other worlds combined, and the human attacks were becoming more sophisticated every week. Marcus led his team through a series of connected basements toward their target. Intelligence from Katie's network indicated that the Vorthak had established a command post in the old City Hall building. If they could capture or destroy it, the alien coordination in this sector would be disrupted for days. The team moved silently, through passages that had been cut between building foundations. The Resistance had spent months creating these hidden routes that allowed them to move anywhere in the city without being detected by alien sensors. Steve Miller had provided them with new weapons based on captured Vorthak technology. The rifles looked like human designs, but fired energy beams that could penetrate alien armor. More importantly, they were powered by batteries that could be recharged using portable solar panels. "Target building is 50 meters ahead," whispered Ryan Hughes, who had been leading scouting missions since the invasion began. He had survived the destruction of his ship during the first battle, and now used his tactical skills to plan resistance operations. Through a carefully cut hole in the basement wall, they could see into the alien command post. Vorthak officers stood around holographic displays that showed their patrol routes and base locations. This was exactly the kind of intelligence the Resistance needed to plan future attacks. Marcus gave hand signals to his team, and they moved into position. They had practiced this operation dozens of times in the tunnels below. Every person knew their role and their escape route. In 30 seconds, they would strike simultaneously from multiple directions. The attack lasted less than 2 minutes. Energy weapons fired from concealed positions, destroying the alien equipment and eliminating the guards. The Vorthak officers tried to return fire, but their positions were exposed while the humans attacked from cover. By the time reinforcements arrived, the resistance fighters had vanished back into the tunnels carrying captured equipment and intelligence data. The alien command post was a smoking ruin, and 3 blocks of their patrol network had been disrupted. Katie received the success signal and immediately transmitted new orders to other cells across the city. While the aliens were responding to the command post attack, she coordinated strikes against 3 supply depots and a communication relay station. Dr. Wells studied the captured Vorthak equipment in his underground laboratory. Each piece they acquired taught him more about alien technology and tactics. But more importantly, it revealed how the enemy thought and planned their operations. Their tactical doctrine is based on overwhelming firepower and technological superiority, he explained to Colonel Parker during one of her visits to the Resistance base. They've never faced an enemy that could adapt faster than they could respond. Colonel Parker had been moving between Resistance cells for months, coordinating the global fight against the occupation. Her original plan had been to harass the aliens until human forces could regroup for a counterattack. But she was beginning to realize that the Resistance itself might be more effective than any conventional military response. "What are our current capabilities?" she asked Dr. Wells. "We can now manufacture ammunition for captured Vorthak weapons," he reported. "Steve Miller's team has reverse-engineered their shield technology, and we're building portable generators. Most importantly, we've learned to predict their patrol patterns and response times." Helen Price had been treating more than just physical wounds in her underground hospital. She had become the unofficial morale officer for the entire Resistance network. Her patients told stories of successful missions and close escapes that spread hope throughout the tunnels. "The aliens are getting nervous," she told Colonel Parker. "Prisoners we've captured say their officers are arguing about tactics. Some want to increase the brutality of their occupation, while others think they should negotiate." Parker found this information very interesting. If the Vorthak were having internal disagreements, it meant their usual methods were not working. No species had ever forced them to question their own tactics before. Above ground, the alien occupation was becoming more aggressive. Vorthak forces began conducting house-to-house searches and establishing checkpoints on every major street. They were trying to cut off the Resistance from any remaining civilian population, but the humans had anticipated this response. During the first months of occupation, they had evacuated most civilians to rural areas or underground shelters. The few people who remained in the cities were Resistance volunteers who had chosen to stay and fight. Marcus received new orders from the Resistance Command Network. Intelligence indicated that a senior Vorthak commander would be inspecting positions in the downtown area the next day. This was an opportunity to eliminate high-value targets and send a message to the occupation forces. The plan required coordination. Between 5 different Resistance cells and perfect timing, they would have one chance to strike before the aliens realized what was happening. If they failed, the reprisals would be severe, but if they succeeded, it would prove that no alien was safe anywhere on Earth. Steve Miller had been working for weeks on a special device for this mission. Using captured Vorthak technology, he had built what he called a disruptor bomb. Instead of causing physical destruction, it would overload alien shield generators and communication systems in a wide area. Katie coordinated the attack from her command post deep beneath the city. She monitored alien radio traffic and tracked the movement of their target through the network of observers the Resistance had placed throughout Chicago. When the alien commander's convoy entered the kill zone, Katie gave the signal that triggered simultaneous attacks from multiple directions. The disruptor bomb activated, first cutting off the aliens from their support networks. Then resistance fighters struck with captured energy weapons and improvised explosives. The senior Vorthak officer died along with his entire escort in an attack. That lasted less than 5 minutes. By the time alien reinforcements arrived, the resistance fighters had escaped through prepared routes, and the area was empty except for destroyed vehicles and bodies. High Commander Zethkar received news of the attack while reviewing Belai. Admiral Kevin Stone stood in the command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching the screens that showed space around Earth. It had been 6 days since the Discovery returned with news of the alien ultimatum. 6 days of frantic preparation that everyone knew would not be enough. Colonel Beth Parker sat at a table covered with maps and battle plans. She had spent her entire career studying military history and tactics. Now she faced an enemy that no human army had ever encountered before. An enemy with technology that made human weapons look like ancient swords. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the solar system," reported Dr. Nathan Wells from his position at the sensor station. He was both a scientist and military strategist who had been brought in to help analyze alien technology. "Whatever's coming is much bigger than the ship that encountered the Discovery." Admiral Stone nodded grimly. The Vorthak were arriving exactly when they said they would. Despite having superior technology, they seemed to value punctuality and keeping their word. It was one of the few things humans had learned about their psychology in the past week. "How many ships?" Stone asked. Dr. Wells checked his readings again, and his face went pale. "At least 50 large vessels plus hundreds of smaller craft. The total mass is equivalent to a small moon." General Alex Turner walked over to join them at the main display. He was in charge of all ground forces on Earth and had been working with Colonel Parker to prepare defenses. "Our satellites are picking up the same readings. This is a full invasion fleet." The main screen flickered, and the same reptilian face that Captain Morrison had encountered appeared before them. High Commander Zethkar looked exactly the same as he had a week ago, but now he was surrounded by other Vorthak officers on what was clearly the bridge of a massive warship. "People of Earth," the alien commander began in his cold voice. "Your 7 days have ended. We have received no communication indicating your surrender. Therefore, we will now begin the conquest of your world." Admiral Stone stepped forward even though he knew the aliens could not see him. "This is Admiral Kevin Stone of Earth Defense Command. We formally reject your demands for surrender. Earth will defend itself." Zethkar's yellow eyes seemed to look directly at him through the screen. "Admiral Stone, your species continues to choose extinction over servitude. We find this both puzzling and wasteful. No other species has made this choice when faced with our power." "Then you've never met humans before," Stone replied firmly. "Indeed we have not," the alien commander agreed. "But we have studied your broadcasts and communications during the past week. Your military preparations are impressive for such a primitive species. However, they will not save you." Colonel Parker had been listening to every word while studying tactical data on her tablet. Something about the aliens' tone bothered her. They seemed almost curious about human resistance rather than simply angry about defiance. "Your ships will be destroyed," Zethkar continued. "Your cities will be occupied. Your leaders will be eliminated. But we will preserve most of your population. For use as workers and servants, the Vorthak Empire always has need for labor." "You're welcome to try," Admiral Stone said, "but humans don't make good slaves." The alien commander made that sound that was almost laughter. "Every species believes that until they are conquered. We will begin with orbital bombardment of your military installations. Then we will land ground forces to secure your population centers. Resistance will only increase your casualties." The communication ended, and immediately alarms began sounding throughout the command center. Enemy ships were entering Earth's outer atmosphere and moving toward major cities around the planet. "All defense platforms are engaging," reported Dr. Wells. "Fighter squadrons are launching from every base." On the main screen, they watched as human spacecraft rose to meet the alien invasion. Earth's best pilots flew interceptors armed with the most advanced weapons humanity could build. But even as they watched the first engagements, it was clear that human technology was no match for Vorthak shields and weapons. Colonel Parker watched fighter after fighter disappear in bright flashes as alien beam weapons cut through them. But she also noticed something else. The aliens were not destroying the fighters as quickly as they could. They seemed to be studying human tactics and responses. "They're learning from us," she said to Admiral Stone. "They want to understand how we fight before they finish us off." Stone nodded as he watched more of his pilots die. "Then we need to make sure they learn the wrong lessons." Above them, the battle raged in Earth's atmosphere. Human defense platforms fired everything they had at the alien ships, but their weapons barely scratched the enemy shields. The Vorthak fleet moved with perfect coordination, destroying military targets with surgical precision. But the aliens made their first mistake when they began targeting civilian areas in major cities. Massive beam weapons struck down from orbit, turning entire city blocks into craters. The bombardment was meant to break human morale and force surrender. Instead, it had the opposite effect. General Turner received reports from around the planet that made him smile despite the destruction happening above. "Sir, civilian evacuation is proceeding faster than we projected. Instead of panicking, people are helping each other reach the underground shelters. Military recruitment centers in every city are flooded with volunteers." Colonel Parker looked up from her planning table. "The bombardment is actually helping us. Every building they destroy becomes a potential hiding place for resistance fighters. Every crater becomes a defensive position." Dr. Wells monitored communications from around the world. "I'm receiving similar reports from every continent. The aliens just united our entire species against them." Admiral Stone watched the tactical display as alien landing craft began descending toward major population centers. Massive troop transports landed in parks and open areas while smaller craft deployed soldiers throughout the cities. "Phase 2 is beginning," he announced. "All units switched to guerrilla protocols." Around the world, human military forces disappeared into underground tunnels and hidden bunkers. Regular armies melted away into the civilian population. Every soldier became a potential resistance fighter. Every civilian became a potential spy or saboteur. The Vorthak ground forces that emerged from their landing craft were impressive. They stood nearly 8 feet tall and wore advanced armor that seemed to absorb energy weapons. They carried rifles that could punch through concrete walls and moved with the coordination of a species that had conquered many worlds. But as they began occupying human cities, they encountered something they had never faced before. The humans had not fled in terror as expected. Instead, they had simply vanished. Colonel Parker had spent months before the invasion studying every guerrilla war in human history. She had learned from the mistakes and successes of resistance movements from every continent and every era. Now, she put that knowledge to use. "Operation Nightfall is now active," she announced to resistance cells around the world. Make them pay for every block they take. The first Vorthak patrols that moved through seemingly empty human cities found themselves under constant attack from enemies they could not see. Snipers fired from abandoned buildings, then disappeared through prepared escape routes. Improvised. Explosive devices destroyed alien vehicles. Communication lines were cut as soon as they were established. Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship studying reports from the ground forces. This was not proceeding as planned. Other species had either fought conventional battles that ended quickly or had surrendered immediately when faced with superior technology. "Status report," he ordered his second in command. "We control all major landing zones and have established perimeters around population centers," the officer reported. "However, we are taking continuous casualties from small unit attacks. The humans appear to have evacuated most civilians but left behind organized military units." Zethkar studied tactical displays showing the positions of his forces on the planet below. Red markers indicated areas where his troops had been attacked. There were hundreds of them scattered across every continent. "Casualties?" he asked. 12% of ground forces have been killed or wounded in the first day of occupation. This is higher than our losses during the conquest of any other world. The High Commander found this information disturbing. His species had conquered 17 different worlds and never faced sustained resistance after the initial battles. Most species surrendered when they realized the futility of fighting superior technology. "Double the patrols," he ordered. "Begin systematic searches of all buildings. These humans cannot hide forever." But even as he gave the orders, Zethkar knew something was different about this species. They did not fight like other aliens the Vorthak had encountered. They seemed to adapt their tactics constantly and showed no signs of losing morale despite heavy casualties. On the planet below, Steve Miller worked in a hidden workshop beneath the ruins of Detroit. He was an engineer who had volunteered to stay behind when the civilians evacuated. Now he used his knowledge to build weapons from salvaged materials and captured alien technology. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery watching the stars through the main screen. The ship had been traveling for 3 weeks since leaving Earth's solar system. This was humanity's first real journey into deep space. Using the new faster-than-light drive that scientists had finally perfected after decades of work. Dr. Lisa Carter walked up beside him holding her tablet. She was the ship's lead scientist and expert on alien life. Her job was to study any new forms of life they might find during their mission. The Discovery was heading toward a star system that long-range scans showed had several planets that might support life. "Captain, we're picking up some strange readings from the third planet in this system," she said, looking at her data. "There are definite signs of technology and possibly cities." Lieutenant Ryan Hughes turned from his station at the weapons console. He was young, but had proven himself during training exercises back on Earth. "Sir, I'm also detecting what looks like spacecraft moving around that planet. They're bigger than anything we've ever built." Jake felt his heart rate increase. This was it. Humanity's first contact with alien life. Everything they did in the next few hours could shape the future of their entire species. He had trained for this moment, but nothing could really prepare. Someone for the real thing. "Take us closer, but keep our distance," Jake ordered. "I want to get a better look at what we're dealing with before we make contact." The Discovery moved forward through space toward the alien world. As they got closer, the sensors picked up more details. The planet was covered in massive metal structures that stretched up into the atmosphere. Hundreds of ships moved between the planet and several space stations that orbited around it. "My God!" Lisa whispered as the images appeared on screen. "This is an entire civilization that's far more advanced than we are." The alien ships were sleek and dark with strange markings along their hulls. They were easily 3 times the size of the Discovery and moved with perfect coordination, like they were part of a single mind. Jake had never seen technology that looked so advanced and threatening at the same time. "Captain, one of their ships is changing course," Ryan announced. "It's heading straight for us." Jake watched as a massive alien vessel turned toward them and began accelerating. Its hull was black as space itself and covered in what looked like weapon ports. This was not the peaceful first contact that humanity had hoped for. "Open a communication channel," Jake ordered. "Let's see if we can talk to them." The alien ship stopped about a kilometer away from the Discovery. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the main screen flickered, and an image appeared that made everyone on the bridge step backward. The creature that looked back at them was clearly reptilian, with dark green scales covering its face and neck. Its eyes were bright yellow and seemed to look right through them. When it opened its mouth, they could see rows of sharp teeth. This was definitely a predator species. "I am High Commander Zethkar of the Vorthak Empire," the alien said in perfect English. "You have entered our territory without permission. State your purpose or be destroyed." Jake straightened his uniform and stepped forward. He knew that everything he said now would be recorded and studied by both species for years to come. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Discovery. We come in peace, seeking friendship and trade between our peoples." The alien commander made a sound that might have been laughter, but sounded more like a growl. "Peace? Friendship? You are a weak species that knows nothing of the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire has ruled this sector for over 1,000 of your years. All species that enter our space have 2 choices: surrender and serve us or be eliminated." Dr. Carter moved closer to Jake's side. She had studied alien psychology and behavior for most of her career, but nothing had prepared her for this. "Perhaps we could discuss terms for peaceful coexistence," she said carefully. "Surely there's room in the galaxy for both our species." "You misunderstand your situation," Zethkar replied coldly. "We do not negotiate with inferior species. You will return to your home world and inform your leaders that they have 7 days to surrender completely to Vorthak authority. Your entire species will become servants of the Empire. This is not a request." The bridge fell silent. Jake felt anger building in his chest, but forced himself to stay calm. "And if we refuse? Then your species will be eliminated completely," the alien commander said without any emotion. "We have destroyed 17 different species that chose to resist us. Your primitive technology would not even slow down our war fleets." Jake looked around at his crew. They were all young people who had volunteered for this mission, dreaming of making history. Now they faced a choice that could determine whether humanity had any future at all. But as he looked at their faces, he saw something that the alien commander had missed. He saw determination. "Then I guess you'll have to eliminate us," Jake said, firmly. "Because humanity doesn't surrender to bullies." The alien's eyes seemed to glow brighter. "You choose extinction over servitude? Your species is either very brave or very stupid." "Maybe both," Jake replied. "But we'll die free." Commander Zethkar stared at them for a long moment, then cut the communication. The alien ship immediately opened fire with weapons that turned. Space around the Discovery bright blue. Jake shouted orders as his crew fought to return fire and escape. The Discovery's shields held for only a few seconds against the alien weapons. Ryan managed to fire their plasma cannons, but the shots bounced harmlessly off the enemy ship's hull. It was clear that they were completely outmatched in terms of technology and firepower. "All power to engines," Jake ordered. "We need to get back to Earth and warn them." Lieutenant Hughes worked frantically at his controls, trying to plot a jump back to human space. The alien ship pursued them, firing constantly, but seemed to be toying with them rather than trying to destroy them completely. "Jump drive is ready," Ryan announced. "But, sir, they're going to be able to track our course back to Earth." Jake knew that by escaping they might be leading the aliens straight to humanity's home world, but they had no choice. Earth needed to know what was coming and prepare for war. "Do it," he ordered. The Discovery jumped into faster-than-light travel, leaving the alien ship behind. But as they traveled through space toward Earth, Jake knew that they had probably just started a war, that humanity might not be able to win. The Vorthak Empire had superior technology and had conquered 17 other species. But as Jake looked at his crew, he saw something that gave him hope. Despite facing impossible odds, none of them had suggested surrendering. Dr. Carter was already working on plans to study the alien technology they had observed. Lieutenant Hughes was thinking about how to improve their weapons and defenses. Commander Amy Brooks received their transmission when they were still 2 days out from Earth. She was in charge of the human colony on New Terra and immediately began evacuation procedures. If the aliens were as powerful as Captain Morrison reported, then humanity needed to prepare for the worst. The Discovery reached Earth orbit and immediately transmitted all their data to Earth Defense Command. Within hours, every military base on the planet was preparing for war. Scientists studied the alien ship designs, looking for weaknesses. Engineers worked around the clock to improve human weapons and shields, but everyone knew the truth. When the Vorthak Empire arrived, humanity would be facing an enemy that had never been defeated. An enemy that gave only 2 choices: surrender or death. And humanity had already chosen their answer.